Imagine, just for a moment, this terrifying, really mysterious illness sweeping through England centuries back. People falling ill, dying in just hours, and then PFT, it just vanishes. What on earth was it? So our deep dive today is going right into one of history's great medical puzzles, England's sweating sickness, or pseudo-anglicus as it was known. We're aiming to unpack, the horrifying symptoms, the whole historical backdrop, the treatments which were, frankly, bizarre, and what modern science thinks might explain it all.
Yeah.
Just try to picture it. You're living in 15th, maybe 16th century England, and this thing is killing people incredibly fast.
Right. And for this deep dive, we're working with some fascinating but definitely challenging historical sources. We've got things like old letters, mentions in early newspapers about the sweat, some crucial eyewitness accounts from physicians who were actually there.
Wow, eyewitness accounts.
Exactly. And even things like parish registers, recording deaths during Henry VIII's time. But the real challenge, obviously, is that these records aren't like modern data. They have gaps, they have biases. It's tricky.
Okay, let's get into it then. This sweating sickness, what was it like? Can you give us a sense of what people actually went through?
It sounds absolutely dreadful. It would start really suddenly aches, bad chills, a fever, feeling utterly exhausted. And then came this really foul-smelling sweat, which is where the name comes from, often followed by terrible difficulty breathing. But the truly terrifying part was the speed. People could go from seemingly fine to dead within hours, sometimes just 2 or 3 hours. It's hard to be exact with the numbers, record keeping being what it was, but estimates for the death rate, maybe 30%, possibly even up to 50% in some outbreaks.
50% in hours. That's just unimaginable. When and where did this nightmare begin? And did it spread far?
Well, the timing itself is interesting. The first big outbreak we know of was 1485, which is right at that pivotal moment, the end of the Middle Ages, the start of the Tudor dynasty with Henry VII.
Oh.
And it wasn't just some minor local thing. It really shook society. Even royalty were scared stiff. Henry VIII was apparently terrified of it. He famously fled London during outbreaks in 1517 and again in 1528 to try and avoid it.
Can't blame him, really.
No. And overall, we know of at least 5 major epidemics between that first one in 1485 and the last big one in 1551. They seem to mostly happen in the summer months. And one outbreak in 1529 was particularly bad. It actually spread across the channel into continental Europe.
Wow. Okay, this is really something. But going back to what you said about sources,
Yeah.
how do we know all this? I mean, piecing together something from 500 years ago must be incredibly difficult. What are these main sources?
Yeah, it's like detective work. Researchers basically rely on 3 main kinds of evidence. First, you've got those letters and early news reports we mentioned, things that refer to the sweat. Second, probably the most valuable are those eyewitness accounts from doctors.
Right, the ones who saw it firsthand.
Exactly. People like Thomas Forstier. He was a French doctor in England during that very first 1485 outbreak. And later, John Keyes, sometimes written Caius. He documented the 1551 epidemic in detail. Their writings are crucial. And then thirdly, those parish registers, which give us some sense of the death tolls during Henry VIII's reign, at least in certain areas.
Those eyewitness accounts must feel like finding gold, like a direct look into the chaos.
Yeah.
But you mentioned biases and limitations earlier. What kind of problems do we run into with these old records?
Oh, absolutely. They're invaluable, but you have to read them critically. For instance, you see some reports suggesting it hit rich young men particularly hard. Now, was that really the case? Or is it just that the deaths of prominent young men were more likely to be written about, more likely to be recorded in detail?
Ah, I see. So the records themselves might be skewed by who was doing the writing or whose lives were considered important enough to document?
Precisely. It means our picture of the average victim could be quite distorted. It just underlines the challenge of diagnosing historical diseases, doesn't it? The evidence is patchy, and it's filtered through the perspectives and priorities of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So faced with this horrifyingly fast illness, what did people do? What were the treatments? What did the doctors or barber surgeons, as you said, actually prescribe?
Well, you have to remember the context. Medical understanding was, let's say, very basic compared to now. Barber surgeons did haircuts, maybe pulled teeth, and also acted as doctors. Treatments were steeped in tradition, superstition. The whole idea of germs causing disease was centuries away.
Right.
So the treatments often made things worse. The prevailing theory was that you had to sweat the illness out, which sounds sort of logical given the name maybe, but their approach was extreme.
How so?
They'd wrap patients in heaps of heavy clothes, pile on blankets, keep the room hot, maybe rub their skin vigorously, and give them warm drinks or potions. Basically, anything to encourage more sweating.
Okay, but I also read about keeping patients awake. That seems incredibly strange. Pulling hair, slapping them with herbs.
Yes. Bizarre, isn't it? The idea, apparently, was that falling asleep might be fatal, so they had to keep the patient conscious, sometimes using quite rough methods like pulling hair or, yes, slapping them with rosemary sprigs. Imagine enduring that when you're already desperately ill.
It sounds like torture, not treatment. It really speaks to the desperation, the complete lack of understanding they were grappling with.
It absolutely does. And, this really gets into how wider beliefs influenced medicine. Theories about why this was happening are ranged wildly. Some thought it was miasma, bad air, maybe from filth or swamps. Others saw it as divine punishment.
Linking it to religion.
Yes, particularly with the religious upheaval happening at the time, the tensions between Catholics and Protestants. Some might have seen it as God's wrath for heresy or for the changes happening in the church. These weren't medical theories in our sense, but they absolutely shaped how people reacted and what they thought might help or appease whatever force they thought was behind it.
Which, from a medical standpoint, likely did nothing or made things worse. So this brings us to the biggest puzzle. After 1551, it just stops. The sweating sickness seems to basically vanish from the historical record. What happened? Did it really disappear?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It largely seems to have vanished after that 1551 outbreak. Why? We don't know for sure. Did the disease burn itself out? Did the causative agent change? Did immunity develop? There's even some ambiguity. A few mentions suggest possible isolated cases much later, maybe even into the early 1800s, but nothing like the epidemics.
So it remains a mystery, which leads us to today. What are modern scientists thinking? Have we figured it out with modern tools looking back?
Well, modern science has definitely tried to crack it. There have been several candidates proposed over the years. Some thought maybe anthrax because of the rapid onset and respiratory issues. Others suggested a particularly virulent strain of influenza.
Okay.
But probably the most compelling theory, the one that seems to fit many of the puzzle pieces, is a hantavirus.
Hantavirus, like the ones carried by rodents.
Exactly. Certain types of hantavirus cause symptoms that are, well, strikingly similar in some ways, things like fever, aches, respiratory distress. And hantavirus infections are often linked to rodent populations, which could potentially explain the seasonality maybe linked to rodent cycles or human activity that brought them into contact, like harvests in the summer and autumn.
That sounds plausible.
Hmm.
So is that the answer then? Hantavirus.
It's a strong contender, but, and this is big, but we can't prove it, the major hurdle is physical evidence. Hantavirus is an RNA virus, meaning its genetic material, the RNA, degrades relatively quickly over time, especially compared to something like DNA in bones. Finding intact, identifiable hantavirus RNA from skeletal remains from the 15th or 16th century is, well, considered almost impossible with current technology. We don't have preserved tissue samples from victims.
So no smoking gun.
No smoking gun. It fits the description quite well in many respects, but without that direct biological evidence, it remains a hypothesis. A compelling one, perhaps, but still a hypothesis. The sweating sickness remains officially unsolved. And it's a powerful reminder, really, of how hard it is to diagnose diseases of the past when the physical traces are gone.
So the deep dive into the sweating sickness really shows us more than just a forgotten disease. It's like looking into a historical mirror, isn't it? It reflects how vulnerable we've always been to things we can't see and how hard it can be to truly understand the past. Some of history's scariest stories are still just whispers.
Which leaves us with something to think about, maybe for you, the listener. How does digging into these old medical mysteries change how we see modern medicine, the progress we've made, and what lessons are still relevant today about?
Well, about our relationship with the unseen world and our own vulnerability.